this is a warm-up for the sermon on Sunday, because Nicole has given me a chance to just come online today and kind of give you what I'm going to say on Sunday. But, you know, show up on Sunday anyways, I'm suggesting, just to get the inside track. And if you can't, you're welcome to the service today, and I'll give you a little bit of a taste of the sermon on Sunday. So I'm talking to people here that live in Sydney, but maybe some of you are zooming in from someplace else, which is all good, but we live on the island. And one of the realities of living on an island with very close to a ferry, which is Swartz Bay, where the ferries get off, where the cars get off the ferries, you often pull on that highway, which would be called Pat Bay Highway here in Sydney. And oftentimes you hit a ferry lineup. It's inevitable. So imagine that you've got your vintage car. Here it is, just to show you that I know what a vintage car is. Isn't that beautiful? You see those fins? It's just a lovely car, and you've got it all polished up. You've actually done some work on it, and you've headed out on the highway. On the highway, and you've hit that traffic jam. I mean, what could be worse? You say to yourself, not today, of all days. And so you drive along. Now we have the first set of lights coming off the ferry is at Beacon Avenue, and you get through that, you know, a little slower, and you get to what's called Newton Crossing. Now, Newton Crossing is where the McDonald's is. It's a very famous area. And you slow down, and what happens to your vintage car like that? Remember those fins? I just wanted to show you. Aren't they beautiful? Well, what happens if someone hits you? Bang! And you can just feel the gut reaction. That vintage car that you've worked on, and your first trip out, you've hit a traffic jam, the ferry, and the fins are crushed. Man, that's real suffering. Well, to make matters worse, you continue on. We have a lake just along that road. It's called Elk Lake. And if you're in a traffic jam from the ferry, sometimes that Elk Lake area starts to more sparse traffic. You continue on for a bit longer, thinking, man, I'm going to pick up some speed here. I can tell I'm going to make this. And I'm going to make this. Let me see. I really am going to make this. Yeah. Okay. Man, listen to that. You pull over. You sit there in your car thinking, day. This patrolman gets out of the car, a patrol person, we might say, patrol officer, let's put it that way. He gets to the car, she gets out of the car, and she hands you a citation. And then you look behind, and all those cars are slowing down behind you, very slow, and they're just craning their necks to see who got caught. That's suffering of sorts. That's a bad day. That's one of those days where you feel like it should never have started on that highway. So that's one kind of suffering. And imagine another kind of suffering. You're standing at a fence in Afghanistan airport. It's 12 p.m. August 31st. And you watch that last plane, take off. And fortunately enough, your family's on that plane, but you didn't get your documents approved for some reason, and you're left behind. And you wonder, as you sit on that fence at 12 p.m., August 31st, 2021, if you'll ever get on that plane, and if you ever see your family again. You're a woman, and you're just being released from the hospital. Your husband has pulled you out of the rubble, and unfortunately, your son is still buried under the rock somewhere. And they're releasing you from the hospital with nowhere to go. And you're among the survivors in that earthquake in Hawaii, in Haiti. 2,000 others weren't as lucky. And you are one of the 1,200 families with nowhere to sleep. That's suffering. That's fathomless loss. That's real adversity. That's intense pain. That's aching grief, however you put it. And what a contrast, right? We think we have it bad. So Jesus, in the passage that we're going to read, it's the passage, you may know it, he talks about pain. He talks about aching pain. And he's saying, I'm going to experience some aching pain. And you remember the passage. Peter says, no, you can't do that. It's not part of the agenda. And Jesus said, get behind me, Satan. I'm not one of those best lines. And then he says, those who want to lose their lives shall save it. And those who save those who lose their lives for the gospel shall save it, essentially is what he's saying. So I want to tell you about two people in my life, in my lifetime, that I think have lived that quote. Those who want to lose their lives for the sake of others, perhaps in the gospel, however you want to see it, shall save it. To me, they come to mind. And obviously, perhaps the first one that came to mind for you, if you're my age, is someone like Mother Teresa. I don't have to introduce Mother Teresa to you. She was canonized about 10 years ago. And she established Missionaries of Mercy. Of course, we know they were to work with the poorest of poor in Calcutta. And out of that Missionaries of Mercy that she set up, they have now grown to 430 odd missions in 133 countries. From that beginning that Mother Teresa envisioned. And that movement now has like 4,500 workers. Can you imagine the good they're doing, huh? Still doing. Now you should know something about Mother Teresa. There is kind of a connection between suffering and dedication. And she learned that connection, you see, at a very young age. At 8 years old, her mother died. And her mother was forced to take in sewing, and can you imagine how long hours those were? And she saw her mother make the connection between suffering, losing a spouse, and dedication. Dedicating her family, her life to her family in the pursuit of a way of keeping them alive. So you see, Mother Teresa learned suffering and dedication at a very young age. And when she died, the Secretary of the UN said, you probably remember when she died, but when the Secretary of the UN said, he said, she was the UN. She was the UN. Can you imagine that kind of bold, major statement? She was peace. And the Prime Minister of India, and you remember that her first mission was to Calcutta, to the poorest of the poor. He said, that Mother Teresa represents the best humanity can do in the face of suffering. So there it is, the connection, you see, between suffering and dedication, and losing one's life to gain it in service to others. That's the most obvious example. The other, here's a picture of Mother Teresa, if you recall. I'm sure you all know her, and there's her young picture, probably a high school picture at that point. The next person I want to show you is this man. His name is David Granier. And he set up an organization which I'm on the board. It's called Stand Up for Mental Health. He's a comic. He's also Order of BC, but he's done this comic. He established this kind of comics, and one of them as well, to basically raise the whole area of mental health awareness. Having lived that himself, as bipolar, he's recovered from it, but still struggles, and now sends comics to all over the world virtually to deliver the message about the presence of mental health awareness. And it's let's agree that's an important topic during this time. And just a little piece of information for you. Read your Broadview magazine that just came out this month about mental health awareness. See, those who lose their life for a good cause gain it. Well, I don't think that anything like this should be long. I know how it is. And so I just want to wrap up by saying, Peter, when Jesus said, "Get behind me." Gosh, what did he say? Well, imagine, we don't know a lot about Peter's life, but he went on to die for his faith. There's some suffering there. My sense is that changed life went on to something much better than that encounter with Jesus that one day. But he gained his life. And Mother Teresa, of course, profound change she has established in the world just by virtue of her connection to suffering and dedication. And David Granier, who's gained his life through the service to others suffering from mental health issues. Now, this is I'm not sure, just on a lighter note, what does one gain from having one's fender bendered and have a traffic violation? I don't know, you're making a donation to government, maybe? It's hard to say. But whatever. The conclusion is really about us. I'm doing this for St. Paul's United Church in Sydney, and this church is celebrating its 100th anniversary. It's an amazing event. See, that's the church, and it's a cute little church in Sydney, BC, and that's the original church. Anyways, they're celebrating their 100th anniversary. And when do they get to celebrate it? During COVID. What a better time to do it. But it's been a tough time. It's my dog. She loves to hear me scream. That's what a time to clear. Let's see my dog. Okay, there we go. But seriously, what a time to go through COVID and celebrate 100th anniversary. And what makes it even harder for this congregation, they've lost 20 members to death. And 20 members in a relatively small congregation is a huge number. In any congregation during this period is a huge number. But they have tried to establish some new directions. And I think even today I got a message. They're having a coffee on the steps to welcome in newcomers in the area. It's good coffee, right? It's Tim Hortons coffee. Now, I hope I'm not making any advertisements here, Nicole, but it is Tim Hortons coffee, and so it's good. Now, if you were to church on Sunday, if you did come, you'll hear, in this case, that was my partner play, You Raise Me Up. This Josh Groban. wonderful peace. Because at the end of the day, we talk about a friend raising us up, or in this case, someone like Mother Teresa or David Granier raising us up. But that song indicates that God raised us up. God raised us up. And during the difficulties, the anguishes, the intense pains, the fathomless losses, the real adversities, the aching grief, all those kinds of things, we can be assured that God lifts us up. Because God is with us. We are not alone. Thanks be